Dark stats and facts when taboo becomes routine. In bedrooms across continents, something strange is happening. Sexual behaviors once hidden in the shadows are seeping into the mainstream. Voyeurism, bondage, erotic strangulation. What was once taboo is now routine. But with this quiet shift comes a different kind of risk: legal danger, psychological dependency, permanent injury, even death. The numbers tell a stark story. In Sweden, 16% of men and 4% of women admit to voyeuristic acts. Across 41 countries, 5 to 25% of people report engaging in BDSM behaviors. Among adults aged 18 to 35, 57% have experienced strangulation during sex. These aren't just quirky habits. Each act carries consequences far beyond the moment. Legal charges, emergency room visits, broken trust. Let's meet Erik, Priya, and Aisha. 3 people from different corners of the world, connected not by culture, but by the private choices they make and the hidden costs they never expected. This isn't a cautionary tale, it's a true one. Numbers don't lie, and desire doesn't always come without damage. Let's begin. Fact number 1. Erik's midnight gaze. Erik lives alone on the 5th floor of an apartment block in Stockholm, 30 years old, single, introspective. Some nights, when the streets are quiet, he leans by the window, not to smoke, not to think, but to watch. Across the courtyard, light spills from a window. A couple moves around a kitchen. A woman changes her clothes, unaware. He doesn't film, he doesn't break in, he just watches. He tells himself it's not hurting anyone. He's not alone. In Sweden, 16% of men and 4% of women admit to voyeuristic behavior. But globally, the numbers are likely much higher. For every case reported, experts estimate hundreds go unnoticed. Why? Because most voyeurs never get caught until they do. In Sweden, voyeurism is a criminal offence under Chapter 6, Section 15 of the Penal Code, punishable by fines or up to 2 years in prison. Many countries carry similar laws. In the UK, it's called voyeurism with intent to observe, punishable by up to 2 years. In Japan, penalties extend to 5 years for repeat offences. Erik never thought of himself as a criminal, but legally, he is. Beyond the legal risk, there's something else. Erik finds it harder to connect in relationships. Real intimacy feels dull. Watching gives a jolt that dating doesn't. Researchers have found that repeat voyeurism can evolve into compulsive sexual behaviour disorder, a pattern that mimics addiction requiring clinical treatment. Erik tells himself it's curiosity. But behind his blinds, what he's really losing is empathy for others, and slowly for himself. Fact number 2. Priya's rituals of trust. In a modest apartment in Mumbai, Priya burns sandalwood incense and lays out her tools. Soft restraints, a blindfold, a feather. She and her partner are careful. They've read guides. They check in, have safe words. To them, it's ritual. Power play, not pain, but permission. What they don't know is how common their world has become. According to surveys across 41 countries, 5 to 25% of people actively participate in BDSM-related behaviours. In one Canadian study, 47% of women and 60% of men reported BDSM fantasies at least once. It's a hidden language of trust and power and sometimes danger. Priya once dismissed the risks, but one night, a leather cuff tightened more than it should have. Her wrist swelled. The numbness lasted for hours. She laughed it off until the next morning, when the sensation still hadn't returned. Medical professionals warn that BDSM injuries, though often minor, can escalate quickly. Nerve damage, blood vessel trauma, broken skin, even psychological dissociation can occur, especially when people aren't trained or move beyond boundaries without awareness. In 2017, an emergency department study in Germany found BDSM-related injuries had increased by 25% over the previous 5 years. Most were accidental, but some were severe enough to require surgery. And then there's the legal grey area. In India, consensual BDSM exists in legal limbo. In many countries like the UK and Germany, even if both parties consent, serious bodily harm is not legally defensible under consent. A person can be charged even if the injured party says it was mutual. Priya keeps her bruises hidden. She doesn't want questions at work. She tells herself it's private, controlled, but in truth, many BDSM relationships walk a fine line between safety and obsession. And that line, it moves more easily than you think. Fact number 3, Aisha's tap of silence. Melbourne nights are cool and quiet. Aisha, 24, studies law. On weekends, she sees Jamie, her boyfriend of 2 years. One night, during sex, she asked for something new, light choking. She'd seen it on the internet. Friends mentioned it. Everyone's doing it, right? The first time was fine, but the third? He didn't feel her tap, or maybe ignored it. She remembers trying to speak, but nothing came out. She remembers stars bursting behind her eyes. Aisha is part of a growing group. In a large 2023 Australian study, 57% of adults aged 18 to 35 said they'd been strangled during intercourse. 51% had done it to someone else. Most tried it between ages 19 and 21, often without knowing what they were really doing. Here's what most don't know. Even one moment of restricted oxygen can cause microstrokes, long-term memory damage, throat injuries, or death. There is no medically safe way to strangle someone. Yet only 48% of people surveyed understood it could be deadly, despite participating. In hospitals, ER visits linked to sexual asphyxiation have more than tripled in the last 15 years, according to emergency data from Canada and the UK. Cases often go unreported. In the US and New Zealand, accidental deaths from sexual strangulation, often during solo play, are not uncommon, though rarely talked about. There's legal danger too. In places like Australia and the UK, non-fatal strangulation is a standalone criminal charge, even when consent is given. In New Zealand, it can result in up to 7 years imprisonment. In some cases, courts have ruled that consent is not valid when unconsciousness or risk of serious injury is involved. Aisha woke up confused, sore, but alive. Others haven't. She hasn't tried it since. She doesn't know how to talk about it either. The experience lingers, not as shame, but as a lesson. Some desires flirt too closely with silence. So, what do we learn when we look into the shadows of pleasure? Voyeurism hides in apartments and camera lenses, and behind it, criminal charges and emotional numbness. BDSM rituals bloom in trust, but sometimes end in hospital rooms or legal consequences. Strangulation promises intensity but risks permanent damage or death, often misunderstood by the very people who try it. These acts aren't rare, they're spreading, quietly, globally. Behind closed doors around the globe, each with its own thrill and price. Desire doesn't ask permission to evolve. But the body has limits, and the law often arrives too late. So, the next time a whisper in the dark invites something new, ask not just if you want it, but what it could cost. Stay curious, but safe.